Hey YouTube, what's up? This is Steven and welcome back. Alright, in this video I want to talk about and explore the question, why do militant, light-skinned and biracial people exist within our community, within the black community, right? That's something that I want to explore in this particular video right here. Alright. And let's start off. All right, when you think of a militant black leader, right? Who comes to mind usually? Right? Militant, right? Someone say, hey, name a militant pro-black leader. Who would kind of pop into your mind, at first thought, right? Probably Malcolm X, right? That's usually kind of like the go-to, right? When you think of militant pro-black leader, right? But of course, we have others, like Huey P. Newton, right? Louis Farrakhan, right? Even well, Muhammad Ali. I was going to say Cassius Clay, but Muhammad Ali, right? And as well, those are like the most high profile. But even on lower levels, even like hey, perhaps like to a lesser extent, like Zaza Ali, right? Who else? And even on like an even lower level, I would say maybe even like Jesse Williams and Colin Kaepernick, right? But yeah, I kind of wanted to speak on and explore kind of like it seems like perhaps like light skin, especially light skinned folks, but also biracial people, but especially light skinned folks, seemingly seem to be like the pro-black folk, or not the pro-black folks, but like the militant folk, right? And like, why is that? Why is that? It seems like it is, right? But when you think about it and think who you would expect to be militant, you kind of tend to think like maybe like the darker skinned people, right? And not to say that there aren't, right? Because there are militant dark-skinned people. But as far as like reaching that level for some reason and being like really visible in the media, right? You don't really seem to see them that much for some reason, right? And darker skinned people are kind of like stereotyped as being like kind of like angry, like aggressive, strong as well. Like a lot of these kind of like stereotypes that we would associate with being militant are often associated with darker skinned people. But oftentimes when you think of militant pro-black folk, especially pro-black leaders, they don't, like dark skinned folks don't seem to pop into mind for some reason, right? And I'm like, I wonder why that is, right? Why is that? As far as, okay, I'll talk about dark-skinned folks first, and then I'll jump to light-skinned folks. As far as dark-skinned people not seemingly being militant, at least on, that super high level, being really visible in the media and that type of stuff, I think perhaps it might be because I think white supremacy really tends to focus on them because dark-skinned people are the face of black people, you know um, you know and as well tend to kind of like at times be like the target of that overt violent racism, right? And historically it has been like that to the point where it's like dark-skinned folks perhaps maybe kind of like stay in your lane, right? Stay in your place, right? Because you have seen it play out so many times in the media, right? Where this dark-skinned person has been attacked, right? So it's like you can't kind of like get away with it, or you can't do that, And I know this is kind of like a sensitive topic to talk about, this particular topic, and I'm trying to choose my words carefully, carefully and not offend anybody, right? Because that's not the purpose of this video, right? I'm just trying to explore something, right? I'm not trying to offend, anybody in the community, right? Like, can we all get along? That's how it is when it comes to like us in the community. We should be able to get along, right? But back to the topic though. So yeah, when it comes to darker skinned people, I think they may hesitate to be that militant person, because historically they have seen violence, and um, you know, evilness, played out against them, right? Again, 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 and that image being repeated over and over again, right? And you're seeing that image throughout history of like, this is what happens when you speak up or you speak out, right? This is what happens to you. Even folks who don't speak out, and minding their own business, right? So I was like, okay, I think when it comes to the militant, dark skinned people being militant, I think it might be like, I might just need to go alone to get along. I might need to just not ruffle any feathers, stay in my lane, that sort of a thing, right? All right. Light-skinned folks and biracials as well, but especially light-skinned folks. Okay, let's talk about them now. Why do they seem to be more militant, right? All right. One thing that was kind of like brought up, or that has been brought up before, reoccurringly, is like, oh, they're trying to make up for their blackness, or their lack of blackness, because, every time they look in the mirror, they see a cracker, right? So they got to keep reminding themselves that, I'm pro-black, I'm black. That's when I'm down, that sort of thing, right? Proving it to other people and even to themselves, right? So being militant would help give that image, right? Like they're down, they're for black people, they embrace their blackness, that sort of a thing. That's one reason, right? Make up for that cracker blood that's flowing in them, right? Um, Another reason that I've heard thrown around, but not quite as much, is that perhaps light-skinned and biracial people view white people as like a barrier to their own privilege. Which I'm like, if you think about it, it kind of is, like kind of like white privilege would be kind of like up here, while light-skinned privilege would be like below that, right? And perhaps some light-skinned people may feel like white people are in the way, they are a barrier. They are an obstacle to their own privilege. But this concept would mean that perhaps light-skinned people are not working for the good of the black community in total, but for perhaps the good of their self or their skin tone, right? I do think there perhaps could be some truth into this, but usually when I see pro-black, or rather militant, light-skinned and biracial folks, they seemingly seem to be for the mass of black people, right? They don't seem to really be advocating for topics that affect them, honestly, like, racial profiling, police brutality, colorism, etc., right? They don't seem to really be advocating for, or they do seem to be advocating, rather, sorry, like they seem to be, let me clear that up right quick. They seem to be advocating for things or, topics and issues that don't necessarily affect them, right? That don't affect them that as much, right? Like the racial profiling, perhaps, or the police brutality, or the colorism, right? Because like sometimes I kind of think like in some cases it could be really easy for me to just sit back and say nothing and just go along and pretend like nothing's a problem, hey, Police brutality ain't my problem. They ain't shooting down us waffle-colored Negroes in the street, right? Up, colorism ain't my problem, right? But how messed up would that be, right? How shady would that be if I were to take that mindset, right? If I were just to be the only time I care about black issues is, when it affects me directly. How shady would that be? But as quiet as it's kept, we got people in the community who do that, right? Who do feel that way. Like if it ain't affecting me, like, oh, my family ain't experienced police brutality. But when it starts happening to your ass, then you want folks to come to your defense and to help you, etc., etc., right? um, so yeah, but let me get back on topic. All right, so another reason that some light-skinned folks perhaps could be light-skinned and biracial people can be pro-black, or find it, feel they need to be it, or gravitate towards it, is because perhaps maybe they just don't see it being played out in the media, right? It's like, hey, no one really is speaking on these issues forcefully and bluntly as it should be, right? It's like, well, if no one's gonna step up to the plate and go to bat, might as well be me. If no one's gonna step up and do it, right? As well, another reason perhaps is because light-skinned people may not have that sort of hesitation that some dark-skinned people may have, because perhaps they, the lighter-skinned folks have not necessarily been the primary target of white supremacy, right? They're the target in the sense that they claim a black identity, but perhaps not. When white supremacists think of black people, they wouldn't jump into mind automatically, right? It'll be like, oh yeah, they are included too. But yeah. So perhaps, not having that hesitation because they don't have that experience of being, like historically attacked, right? Historic, like lynchings, what else? Police brutality, racial profiling, etc. All the things that we have endured as a people. Seemingly lighter skinned people seem to bear less of the brunt of that, right? And that can probably even go all the way back to slavery, right? Where, dark skinned folks outside, light skinned folks in the house, right? And we still kind of see that dynamic still playing out to today. Same shit, different day, right? So I think that may be a part of a reason why some lighter skinned folks may gravitate towards being more militant, because, well, they're like who gonna check me? Like, who gonna check me, right? Because they ain't used to being checked like that, But yeah, I do think this is a very interesting topic that often I think is sort of like just maybe not really explored, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be, but I think it is something that's worth exploring, right? But yeah, when you think of, militant black leaders, a lot of times lighter skinned folks for some reason seem to jump into mind, That's strange, because a lot of times people would kind of assume, right, the dark, like we got these stereotypes, like light-skinned folks, they're weak, right? They're not strong, right? The stereotypes, the negative stereotypes about light-skinned and biracial folks not being like as strong as, our darker skinned counterparts, right? And how that plays out, because we do sometimes associate kind of like darker skin with like masculinity, right? And we associate lighter skin with femininity, right? In the community especially, right? But oddly enough, when the black community needs someone to be militant and really speak on some shit and to speak really bluntly and forcefully, who steps up to the plate, all right? But before I end this video, I do want to present a question, particularly to the darker skin, darker skinned folks, right? How do you feel about militant light skinned folks? How do you feel about them, right? Light skinned and biracial folks, right? How do you feel? Is it like, that's what's up? You know, power to the people, thanks for being down and having our back, or is it like, whatever? Or is it like, hey, fall back, you don't need to be speaking on our issues. We do, Again, I'm just curious about that. How do dark-skinned people feel about this, right? So, yeah. Thanks a lot for watching, you guys. Feel free to comment. Feel free to subscribe. Feel free to give me a thumbs up. Feedback and support, extremely appreciated and valued. Into the next video. Adios and goodbye for now.